Sports Cast of the Year, a regular contributor here to the show, Scott Gray. Good morning, Sunday morning.
Good morning, Stan.
How are you, sir?
Well, it's always a pleasure to be with you.
Looking quite dignified today.
I try every once in a while, you know. When the wife dresses me, I do all right.
It's getting deep out here, right? So, listen, who would have thunk it?
Who would have?
Right? UConn football, and they want to build this stadium and turn this 1A program into a big powerhouse. Who would have thunk it? Where were you on this thing? Do you think they'd be in a major bowl game, the Fiesta Bowl, 10 years hence?
Actually, I was probably leading the charge to get that stadium built 15 years ago, and I really believe that the infrastructure was in place at the University of Connecticut, thanks in great part to the basketball programs that, you know, rising tides lift all boats. Well, as the basketball programs went up, the entire athletic department grew, the infrastructure, the physical plant, everything grew, the sports information department grew, which was a very big component of all of this. And by the time the debate over the football stadium came along, I really believe that all the infrastructure was in place, that this program could succeed if you just gave them an opportunity to elevate.
All right, but in basketball, as you know, all it takes is 3 good recruits to turn a marginal basketball team into division power. In football, you got, 100 guys on a team there. So this is a big deal. This is 10 years where the Fiesta Bowl, $17 million is divvied up between the Big East and the school. This is an enormous, remarkable story for a football program that many fought very hard to say, you know what, we like the Yankee Conference, wherever they were, the 1A, let's stay there. We're biting off too big a piece of the apple.
Well, you talk about the basketball programs. You get a couple of big-time recruits. They come in, they can carry a program for a couple of years, and then they can start generating interest in the program that brings in more recruits.
Right.
With the football team, you're dealing with 85 scholarship athletes on an annual basis, and this really, to me, makes the coach such a key component.
Randy Edsall.
And in this case, it's Randy Edsall. I mean, because it's so difficult for coaches to really get enough personal knowledge of each player they recruit. You get 85 players you recruit. You have over 110 players on the team.
And he's not getting the blue chip recruits. He's not getting the top of the tier. He's getting sort of guys who are average players.
So he's got to have a great handle.
He's coaching them up.
He's got to have a great handle on the kids he brings in terms of their athletic ability, what he can do with them, how they're going to fit his program, but also the kids themselves personally. He has to know something about them, what makes them tick inside. And look at the decisions that he's been forced to make this season that have become big parts of making this season a success. Which kids really are you going to give a second chance to, and how many chances do you give which kids? Which kids are going to respond to the opportunities that you give them, and which kids end up actually leaving the program, even key kids? How many coaches around the country do you know are going to let their number one quarterback go?
Well, how about this? How about a decision to have a kicker and say, you know what, you're my kicker. His name is Dave Taggart.
Right.
Now, he goes into the annals of UConn history with Tate George, an enormous kick, right? 52-yarder. I think we have some video on that.
It's so overlooked. I can remember the days when...
There it is there, right?
There it is right there with a little room to spare.
Right.
And I can remember the days when Lou Holtz, who was the big-time coach in the country, wins a national championship in Notre Dame, and he said, I wouldn't waste a scholarship on a kicker. But how important is that? I mean, since Randy Edsall's been there, getting that consistent kicker has been a problem. He's brought in kids with great toes. He's brought in kids with great character. But you got to get the complete package. I mean, that kick you just saw was a big-time kick.
Enormous.
That was an NFL kick under enormous pressure. And that's what you have to have in a kicker, is a kid that's capable of doing that. And that was the 4th kick of the game, and the second from 50 yards plus.
To be part of the problem. Back to UConn now. This is a team that, truth be told, doesn't overwhelm you on paper, right? You've got a good kicker.
Right.
You've got a good running back in Jordan Todman. Right. You've got a pretty good defense.
You got a great
After that, you've got a lot of issues, including quarterback, where the young man wins, right? Zach Frazier's team wins, but doesn't scare anybody on paper. So what do you do now? You're playing big, bad Oklahoma in a Fiesta Bowl with not a whole lot of weapons out there.
Well, big, bad Oklahoma to a point. Bob Stoops does not have a great postseason record at Oklahoma.
He lost 4 in a row, I think, right? They've lost 4.
They've lost 4 in a row. But he also it doesn't always seem to have his team properly prepared on a game-to-game. Cincinnati came very, very close with Oklahoma earlier this season, and UConn really not just beat Cincinnati, controlled that entire game.
You calling for the upset?
I'm not calling for the upset, and I'll tell you, this is what I said earlier this week. I'm not picking Oklahoma to win. I'm not picking UConn to win, because if I make a pick, that leaves me with expectations. UConn has performed very, very well. They performed better this season once the expectations were off.
All right, let's segue from UConn football. We'll talk more about that as the bowl game comes on. Let's talk about UConn basketball. The women's streak continues. As I told John Altavilla, all they do is win these days. Kind of boring, right? What are they now, 84, 85, 89? I lost track.
Sometimes boring, and sometimes they play a game like the one against Baylor at the XL Center earlier this season, which was probably the greatest basketball game I've seen in 5 years.
Wake me at 88 or 89, will you please? Wake me with 89.
We're almost there, Stanley. We're almost there.
Maya Moore becomes now all-time leading scorer.
All-time leading scorer, 1,000 rebounds. I made a prediction when I first saw Maya Moore play at UConn in her first couple of games that by the time she graduates, Gino Auriemma will have as many national championships as Pat Summitt. And I still believe that. I believe that because earlier this season, when they played...
What does Gino have? 8, 9? What's he got? I lost track of that,
This would be number 9.
Okay.
Earlier this season, Maya obviously carried the team. The younger players had to start to learn to come along, pick it up. Stephanie Dolson has gotten so much better in the middle. Bria Hartley has emerged as a player who's, both of them freshmen, but she's emerged as a player who's absolutely fearless. Those plays she made at the end of the Baylor game, she really established herself.
Right?
She's the next one.
Back to Maya Moore. What I like about her, forget about the on-court stuff. Here's a person who wanted to go for a Rhodes Scholarship and was competing for that. And that, to me, is what's really impressive. Great athlete.
Now, I believe she's still a Rhodes Scholar.
She's still in the running for that?
Candidate, yes.
Well, that's really impressive. That tells you a lot about her. Right?
Well, you know, anytime
arguably more important than her basketball exploits, the fact that she's a Rhodes Scholar and can compete intellectually is huge.
Anytime you sit down and talk with Maya, anytime you see her, just her presence on the court, anytime you see her relating to the other players on the team, these players all know who the leader is. They have so much respect for her. More than that, they really love her as a person, as a teammate. These guys are all good friends, and they have blended together behind her. And they know we let Maya show us the way. We do our parts. And these young players really have started to do their parts already. The freshman class at this point is more advanced than I would expect them to be. And after the game, the game against Baylor, when they went down to play Georgia Tech, Gino Auriemma said, when we go down to Georgia Tech, our freshmen aren't freshmen anymore. They're sophomores now.
Speaking of freshmen, now we have to segue to the men now. 6 freshmen. We talked last, I said it publicly, I said there's nothing good about having 6 freshmen on a basketball team. Then they went out and knocked off 2 of the top 10 teams in the country. Right? 6 freshmen, very impressive run here.
I begin to downplay the win over Michigan State a little bit. I'm beginning to see that we had an overrated team there.
Jim Kelly didn't care about it.
But it doesn't make it any less impressive. Okay? And I think some of the big things, I mean, Shabazz Napier, I think the last time we were on, I was talking about him, about how I liked his ability to take the shot, but as the Big East gets closer, he's going to have to learn to take it quicker because they're going to start guarding on him.
Like Kemba Walker does.
Like Kemba Walker does, exactly. Kemba Walker, of course, where does he stand? One of the all-time greats in UConn basketball history. The NBA is already salivating over this kid. Well, you got to give him a ring first. But the freshman class really is coming along to support him. And the kid I really like is Niels Giffey. He came in here and looked totally lost. The kid from Germany arrived late, looked totally lost. He has come on very strong.
All right, we're coming on strong. We're going to close strong. Thanks to our guests, Scott Gray, Katie McCoy, and Fred McKinney. You can send your show comments or requests or even watch us again at ctnow.com. Friend us on Facebook. Become a fan of the Stan Simpson Show. We're on Twitter, too. Look out for those tweets. Lori Perez and The Real Story next. For the good folks here at Fox, Connecticut, I'm Stan Simpson. We'll see you next week.